Welcome to the Common Council Chambers. This is a joint Economic Development Department of Public Works meeting. We're going to talk about a few different things here, and Sarah Walton is going to represent, I guess, today. And maybe we can flesh it out. This is, of course, about the East Adams project. And I'm going to just turn it over to you, Sarah.
Great. Thanks for having me here today. And we've got some guests from the Syracuse Housing Authority here too. And so if questions arise, I think we can collaboratively answer them. But I'm Sarah Walton. I work with the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development. And I would love to...
Sarah, hold up.
Yep.
I should have introduced my fellow councilors that are here. Councilor Caldwell, Councilor Nave, Councilor Paniagua, Councilor Manto, and Councilor Jonah Jones-Rouser, okay? And we're also joined by Bill Simmons of the Syracuse Housing Authority. So okay, run it again, Sarah.
All right. So I'd love to kick us off and talk a little bit about some companion pieces of legislation that are on this afternoon's study session agenda. And because there's a lot of moving parts in this project, I thought it might be helpful to start from the end goal that we have in mind and kind of work backwards from there and talk through some of the logic that got us to this point. So I'll do that and then try to summarize it, and then we can answer questions. But starting with the end goal, as you all know, the city of Syracuse received $30 million in Reconnecting Communities funding. That was part of a larger $180 million that was awarded to New York State Department of Transportation. That $30 million was allocated to fund public improvements in the East Adams neighborhood. Those are above and below street improvements in the neighborhood that will also support the housing improvements that the Housing Authority is leading. In order to unlock those funds, a NEPA, or National Environmental Policy Act, needs to be complete. For New York State Department of Transportation, that's their environmental impact statement, so they've met that threshold. But for the city to access our portion, we need to have our NEPA done. Because the scope of the project is so large, and it obviously involves a tremendous amount of housing work that needs to get done, the NEPA is being done in tandem with the housing project. Being able to complete some of those environmental analyses are pretty typical pre-development parts of projects, and so that work can get underway, but it's a typical pre-development expense that we need to find funding for. The funding that we decided to use for this was made possible through the governor's $10 million allocation. You may remember that from a couple years ago. That's being administered through Empire State Development, or ESD. So that executive budget item was directed to ESD. They'll be administering it. That's wonderful. We received commitment from them that they are willing to fund pre-development expenses, including environmental review. However, their disbursement timeline is later than what we need. What we need is to have NEPA complete by May of this year in order to meet the design deadlines that have been set forward by Federal Highway Administration. So to expedite that process so that we can make sure that the NEPA is complete by May and unlock those $30 million, we have before you a couple companion pieces of legislation. One is to allow MBD to enter into that agreement with ESD, which will, of course, allow for the pre-development expenses, but the majority of it will actually fund housing costs and some public improvements work. And then the other pieces are put forward by the Department of Engineering, where we would ask to enter into an agreement with McCormick Bear and Salazar, or the Housing Authority's master developer, to be able to cover pre-development expenses. That would allow them to enter into an agreement with an engineering firm to complete the NEPA so that we can complete that by May. So in sum, in order to unlock that $30 million, we need to complete NEPA by May, and in order to complete it by May, we need to start initiating that activity right now. And so the goal would be to use city funds, unallocated cash capital, to kind of enter into that agreement with MBS. MBS would execute the agreement with the environmental firm. They would do the pre-development, including environmental review, And I should note that all of the funds, all 10 million, but especially the 2 million we would use up front, are completely and 100% reimbursable by ESD. So that's kind of the process that we've outlined. It's obviously highly collaborative. SHA's board passed a resolution at their last board meeting. And so I'm happy to pause and see if there are any questions about that or see if Bill has anything he wants to add.
So the idea is we're fronting the money, the $2 million, and then we're going to be reimbursed by ESD. At some point, what point would we?
In 2025.
Now, would this continue as far as like the $6.5 million? Would they have to be? Would there have to be a bridge loan for that too?
What we are working through right now is the actual disbursement process through ESD, and so the hope is that that would be funding available to the project at closing, and go right to the housing costs and the public improvements cost. So we wouldn't need to do that.
Okay. What about this contractor? They got already lined up, correct?
McCormick Barron Salazar.
Well, no, I mean their subcontractor to do all this work.
Oh, they're working with an engineering firm called Langen.
And they obviously they don't have time to RFP or anything like that. We don't know who they are, right?
It's one of the affiliates that they subcontract to do some of their work. So the goal would be that we would be able to use it. They're already using Langen for the housing component of the environmental review. And in order to have the most comprehensive environmental analysis possible, we would like to have the public improvements or the public streets factored into that same environmental review.
Well, I'm assuming that because this is a government project, they would adhere to all the MWBE.
Yes.
Those subcontractors.
Yeah, and that's actually a requirement of the ESD funding itself, is that we have to meet that threshold.
Ask that question to make it
public.
Hello, Sarah. Thank you. So with the ESD grant of $10 million, is there any other foresee that we might have to help support before the grant comes through? So we know $2 million you need to get the project started, and this is because part of the grant, we said we were going to support this, right? In the grant.
We did say we were going to support this. Part of the urgency on this, though, is to unlock the $30 million that the city is the recipient for of the public infrastructure. And in order to do that, we need to be able to have the environmental done by May. That's because Federal Highway Administration, which is the agency that's administering those funds, has really tight design deadlines. So that's part of the reason that we're putting this for you in front of you now. In terms of some of the other supports that the project needs, at this point, I don't believe that there are other costs that we would need to use this $10 million for to pay until the closing table.
What? So we already have a letter saying guaranteeing us the $30 million?
We do. We have a signed grant agreement with...
There's a certain urgency there because of the new administration in Washington, do you think, or?
Yeah, to speculate, I think that there was quite a bit of attention that was put at the end of last year to make sure that grant agreements that were funded to communities were signed. And so we worked really quickly with New York State and Federal Highway to get that grant agreement signed.
What is this grant called, the $30 million one?
That's the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods.
How many housing units?
In total, there will be 1,400 at the end, 1,404 at the end of the redevelopment.
So for $30 million will pay for, mostly it'd be housing, obviously, right?
That funding is actually to pay for the public improvements. So all in, it's almost $1 billion worth of investment. A lot of that's going to come in the form of tax credit subsidy that the Housing Authority is leading and applying for.
Bill, what do you use there for low-income LIHTC?
Yeah, the LIHTC is for middle-income housing, and replacement of the public housing, and then there will be some market rate as well. But we're good.
With most LIHTC projects, you have to go through an approval stage. You have to go before HCR, but this is probably outside of that, is it?
No, we went through HCR. We have the approval. Yes. So it's just a matter of closing on some of these deals.
Okay. Any other questions regarding this? Because I don't. Obviously, I think we need to probably address this as soon as we possibly can with the change in Washington.
Yeah.
Well, I'm being polite.
Yeah, yesterday's announcement obviously has,
Yeah, and there was a lot of news yesterday about things
yeah,
changing.
we're in
quickly
touch
down
with
there.
our partners at HUD, and
They're still working then.
they have,
They haven't been eliminated.
we're still in touch, and we're hoping that, because both the Reconnecting Communities and the Choice Neighborhoods grant agreements have been fully executed, that,
I mean, obviously, this is one of the most important projects in my history with the city, to make sure this, especially, the housing crisis we have, and everybody's aware of that, so.
yeah.
If there's no other questions, I'll ask. You don't have anything? Okay. Okay, this could be the quickest public meeting I've ever chaired, so.
Wonderful.
Well, Counselor,
Motion to adjourn?
I know you
Bill,
had
you
a-
want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to add, it wasn't on today's topic, but I do want to hand out some information as it relates to the appraisal of the properties for the land swap. And so I know that you guys, based on your charter approvals, have to wait for the city to have the appraisal in. And we had initially approached you guys about a conditional approval. And so I wanted to make sure that, having this project approved at one of your February meetings will be critical, because there are a number of contractual obligations out there, and as we lose time, then there's going to be money charged against the housing authority. And, you may decide that, we're going to wait for the appraisal before making a decision, but in all due diligence, I wanted to make sure that you were aware of some of the potentially impactful costs to the housing authority if this thing goes out past February.
You're talking about the Children's Rising Center?
That portion
issue?
and the Eastwood Heights project. So I have some documents to hand to you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because we haven't got the appraisal yet for the Latimer Terrace there yet.
I think you're close, but I just wanted to, keep the approval as an option.
Yeah. So, Michael Collins, Commissioner for Neighborhood and Business Development. Another important topic, separate topic. So I think this, very happy to follow up afterwards, considering this meeting was for phases 1 through 3 in the infrastructure. I think, very happy to just have a larger conversation on this.
Well, I think you're right, Commissioner. I think maybe this would deserve maybe even a second,
Sure.
another public hearing, not a public hearing, public meeting on this.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But Mr. Simmons, is there anything you want to tell us? No.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that information that the original request for conditional approval was not only based on some of the timelines and deadlines for the Children's Rising Center, but there's some financial
deadlines.
impacts to the housing authority as well for the Eastwood Heights project.
Well, Bill, everything in here is an up-to-date assessment on everything, or what?
Yes, it just highlights that if we don't get an approval of the appraisal, or if we don't get approval for a conditional appraisal for the approval for the project sometime in the February meetings, that there will be some additional costs to the housing authority and the developer for things that have been lined up already with contractors. So it lays it out in there, and even with the tax credit dollars, we're getting 86 cents on the dollar, and that could drop to 82 cents on the dollar with an impact of, over $400,000 to the project. So you guys will ultimately do what you need to do, but in due diligence, I want to make sure you're aware of all these
Well, it
impacts.
seems to be a lot of moving parts on some of this. I mean, we originally thought they were almost of equal value, but they're not. Well, I'm assuming they're not. Obviously, the appraisal for Eastwood was, $2.6 million, I believe.
Yeah, 2.4. Right.
2.4?
So,
2.6, that's what I thought.
Mr. Simmons, the appraisal you're talking about, that you mean the $2 million that you need us to support the?
Right. So they have a draft of the appraisal for Eastwood Heights at 2.6.
Right.
I guess they're still waiting for the Latimer Terrace, where the Children's Rising Center will go. At a year or two ago, they were equal in value, assuming they will be equal in value as well. Now, if they're not equal in value, I think it's important for the council to realize that there will be some taxes coming to a pilot agreement coming to the city of an approximately $52,000 that you're not getting now. And then also the value of the land that the housing authority will be getting is, 1.8 difference, because the city's keeping some of that. So not knowing what, I think the appraisal will be close, but if they're not close, should be able to do a swap.
So, thank you for that explanation, but I'm saying, you said, you gave us this because it's important. You're talking about what's on the agenda because this is gonna slow up this?
Well, it's going to be some financial impacts to the housing
Okay.
authority if
Okay.
the
We
appraisal
don't-
is approved in
okay.
February.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
But
Thank
to be
you.
clear, Counselor, the request today is really to accelerate the first 3 phases of the East Adams neighborhood
Right,
redevelopment.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, this is, okay. Okay, any other questions? Ask for a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Thanks, counselors.
Thank you.